very nice to be here at the Pyth online conference. And today I'm going to talk about data in crypto. The title, I suppose, is How to Get It Right and Why Should We Care? Yeah, I think I also basically whinge a little bit about the state of it. Yeah, perhaps offer some solutions. Also, we'll see why we haven't really cared about a lot of it so far. My name is Katia Banina. I'm CEO of Bebop, a DeFi DEX aggregator. And a bit about me in the context of this data. My background really has been in data for a while. I worked for Reuters, which is was the data and news company, which then covered multi-asset class data, anything from FX, stocks, bonds, commodities, and I kind of pretty much worked with all of these asset classes. And then from my job at the London Stock Exchange Group, which of course is a lot about exchange traded data, but also kind of lots of different types of data, I moved into the world of crypto and joined Wintermute, where I was looking after crypto OTC product. And that's where my mind kind of was blown by the state of crypto data. But then I moved made another step and moved into the world of DeFi. And that's kind of another level of the sort of data challenge or a data mess, right? And so basically having been away from the world of data for a few years now, I actually realized recently how much I miss it and how much of a data nerd I am. And so, yeah, I'm quite excited to talk about data today. So yeah, that's my background. And this slide really is a very brief and very approximate history of financial data in the sense of like what people really cared about. It all really started with real-time data, primarily pricing data, not surprisingly at all. But then kind of maybe like, depending on kind of how you think about financial data or financial markets in general, is it like the space of hundreds of years, or is it kind of the last few decades of electronic trading? But if you think about the last sort of couple of decades, it was kind of like late 70s, 80s, where reference data and analytics actually became much more prominent and sort of developed. And that's actually where Bloomberg as a platform and as a business was born, right, and started going up so much because they overtook the absolute market leader at the time, Reuters, with this reference data and analytics data. And then kind of like moving forward, what became important was, well, people kind of said, well, okay, we have all this data, it's amazing. Let's analyze it. Let's create relationships. Let's basically use big data and get some sort of signals and insights out of it. And then they realized that it's a mess, right? That like every financial firm out there created their own identifiers, created their own metadata. Half of it is, misaligned, half of it is broken. What you're going to do, right? And so now let's go and clean up this data and normalize and rectify it or whatever. And it still hasn't happened, right? So with crypto, I think we have many opportunities. One of the opportunities we have is to actually get this right from the start. We want and we haven't. But here are some thoughts about how we might go about it. And basically within this timeline, of course, I'm going to talk first about the real-time data. Pricing data is absolutely where it always starts. Why? Because you want to trade, you want to arb. And then kind of later on a little bit, you want to benchmark your execution and you want to benchmark your performance, right? So like once the initial just, hey, I want to trade and I want to arb sort of those opportunities or kind of those like first actions in the market become like a bit more saturated, you want to kind of do a bit more advanced things because, for example, the investors care. But in general, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. If a dog coin is going up 30x, then I care. And so the pricing data is somewhere that's, in crypto, that's kind of, that became the first available data there. But there are, of course, own challenges, right? I mean, and with pricing data, there are a few challenges generally that, again, are there for both crypto and TradFi. The first one is reliability. Fat fingering a Bitcoin trade at Alameda at 8K, like those kind of things always happen. Well, always happen, not always happen, not at all, right? But do happen and have happened in crypto, right? And that's where, like if you build, if you rely on something like that exclusively for various purposes, like this kind of spike might not be fit for purpose. I mean, in TradFi situation, like, it's like it would create the entire kind of mess across, the global financial markets. Latency is another interesting challenge. I have an example here of the early Reuters, actually kind of how that business started, right? Basically, the problem with latency there was how do you send the, prices from the European financial markets to London? And so the founder of Reuters actually used the telegraph and carrier pigeons to kind of solve this latency problem, right? And so the prices that he was sending between Brussels and Aachen, beat the competition by 4 hours or 6 hours or something like that, right? So that's kind of like the olden days. But right now, thinking about latency, Binance has so much trading volume. Everyone wants to be in Asia, right? All the servers move to Asia. So how do you actually like solve this latency problem? And also kind of what do you do if you're located or if your data centers or like other, calculations are located elsewhere in the world, right? And kind of what does it mean in general for that data and, distribution of that data as well. Format's very important. Why is it important? Well, for developers especially, it's actually quite a big, can be quite a big mess. The screenshot on top here actually describes how US treasuries are priced. Really weirdly, they're priced in like 1/32, sometimes in 1/64. There are very weird ways to like with asterisks and like dashes to show this sort of stuff. Kind of doesn't make sense. And we go like, oh, okay, boomers. Like it's so crazy, right? And then I've actually been in situations like, from OTC perspective, and someone says, hey, if you don't give me 8 decimal points on the price for Pepe, which is like, I don't know, like 1/1,000,000th of a cent or something like that, we can't trade this asset with you, right? And so now we're looking at, like this interface where it's like, well, okay, great. You can place this trade and pay like $20 in gas to buy 0.000155 USDC, right? So this is kind of like a little bit of world gone mad. And it means that like every app, every trader, every firm, right, have to deal with something like this, right? And it kind of like, it's not an unsolvable problem, right? But it's kind of a little bit crap. Anyway, so some of those are the challenges. And this is not a paid ad, but to be fair, I think Pyth is actually doing a really good job, right? I quite like Pyth real-time data. I think reliability is good and kind of, the access, the sort of the way you guys are kind of like accessing or approaching the, multi-contributed data, things like that. I'm asked to put the new logo. Sorry, guys, as I said, this is not a paid ad, so that's why I just Googled the logo. So yeah, I mean, look, I think this is really solid, and that's why, I'm happy to come and speak here about data. But, like Pyth provides coverage for a few hundreds of assets, right? So what's the solution for the world full of dog coins, world of, the DeFi world that I live in, right? Because that's the like pricing for those assets is just like a problem that I, face every day. Who cares about accurate pricing if my Dogecoin went up 30x, right? And that's the real reason why, this hasn't been addressed yet, and why it's going to take us longer to get there. But at some point, if some of the assets, kind of more of those assets, want to be investable, it will matter. But like the real-time trading data doesn't actually end with prices. For example, reliable volume data is really important for key execution metrics such as VWAP, right? Volume weighted average price. You see two charts here. The one of them is fake volumes, like full crypto's full of that. So, having calculating those volume weighted average prices is not an easy task. But it's very important, and you can see a Bloomberg screenshot on the right there, the opportunity to become the benchmark for execution quality actually is quite lucrative, right? Like Bloomberg did that in the equity world. It's really a very strong benchmark for execution for, funds and so on and so forth, right? And so doing something like that is extremely hard, but also it makes a lot of sense, right? Especially if we think about execution quality for for the institutional type clients. So if someone wants to solve this problem, it's definitely worth it. But who cares about the execution quality, right? If my Dogecoin went up 30x, and again, right, like not everyone wants or needs to solve these problems, right? There are ways to, make money in this market, make markets in this market, and just, do interesting stuff in these markets without solving these problems. But I do believe that, all of these things will become much more relevant. Let's move to reference data or fundamentals. Fundamentals are quite fundamental, and they're fundamental to every market. It could be OPEC quotas for crude oil. It could be, financial statements for companies. It could be terms and conditions for bonds, as well as, multiple different things across different asset classes. And the kind of thing here is that it's truly expensive to collect and maintain this accurate and up-to-date data. Even this little snippet again from Bloomberg about SBF, you see like so many data points that are collected actually. They have to be collected in time, so it kind of showed his wealth change from being a billionaire to being not a billionaire at all. Keeping this data up to date, keeping it accurate, keeping it like collecting it from so many different places is actually just very kind of labor intensive, and it's just really hard. However, who cares about the fundamentals, right? If my Dogecoin went up 30x. But to be fair, ironically, I actually don't have problem with fundamentals for Dogecoins because there are no fundamentals, right? And that's actually great. If you look at Pepper circulating supply and total supply and max supply, right? It's super transparent, like that's what it is. However, let's say if you wanted to calculate to like find out circulating supply of like a governance token, right? How do you get really this data? How do you enable like the credibility of this data, right? So that you can then build, ratios and other signals and characteristics based on that thing. So actually, meme coins are great because they, the fundamentals are very transparent and very kind of few and far between. But realistically and seriously, as Winchmute CEO tweeted, I think it's his pinned tweet about rainbows and graphs and butterflies and whatever, basically calling it astrology for men. Astrology might not be enough for institutions to make investment decisions, right? And kind of making sense of what those tokens are. And what matters, what are the token fundamentals? I think we're pretty much kind of at that stage, like what are those token fundamentals? And so before solving like the actual how do we collect this data, I think it's like we're at even earlier stage, right? We can't just continue kind of looking at tokens and like assessing their fundamentals on like GitHub commits and this kind of stuff. So I think personally, the first step is at least to see what those tokens are. Is it a stable coin? Is it not a stable coin? Is it a governance token? Is it a utility token? What sort of like business does the company that has this token operate in, right? I mean, look at this just list of tickers, right? I mean, looking at products in crypto, in DeFi and CeFi, pretty much like across the board, we expect people to know what these things are, right? To like have absolutely no information beyond the name and the ticker, well, and the price, of course, and the price performance. But like, it's kind of completely unrealistic to say, hey, okay, we gotta go for the next billion users, in this way. Um, so, honestly, more transparent data, more attractiveness for retail, more attractive for investors, institutional investors, you can create specialized indices with that, right? If we know kind of like these are different parameters of those tokens. And just generally fewer rug pulls, right? Because like if you go, okay, I want to know what it is, right? And there's no information about it. Hey, well, maybe your money isn't going to go there. But fundamentals are hard, right? And as I already said, right? But to be fair, thank God we have blockchain, right? Because we can like collect the data, we can cooperate in a decentralized way, and we can verify as well, right? And I think we should at least attempt to do this, right? Because the ambition is, to start with like some basic data, basic information about those tokens, but ultimately, create the transparency and accuracy of those blockchain token fundamentals, because ultimately that's what crypto is about, right? Like it is about creating that transparency and creating that verifiability of the data. And I think this is a great opportunity. I think it's a very, very hard problem, but I think it's worth attempting for sure. Identifiers and graph. I'm probably overrunning, but I'm gonna like go through this. As you can see, guys, I'm very excited about this topic, so I'm just gonna continue talking. Now, identifiers and graph are kind of like interconnected because basically, just generally, basically to create graph, to create relationships, you need metadata, you need identifiers, you need a data model, and it's a bloody mess right now, right? So, I mean, basically, we are saying, okay, token identifier is it's the address, right? It's a token address deployed on a particular chain, and that's how we deal with tokens. Granted, both tokenlist.org and the token lister, which is kind of the next gen fork of tokenlist by the small dApps team, they're pretty good, right? It's a good first step, but really it isn't enough, right? Like, identifying tokens by the address itself, like, are we thinking about tokens or the smart contracts that represent those tokens? Actually, are we thinking about the assets, right? Like as investable assets, tradable assets, memeable assets, whatever. Like, should we care about tokens, or actually those assets? How do we deal with forks? How do we deal with, V2 tokens, like, I don't know, Gala V1, Gala V2? And what do we even do with, tokens that have different names on a different chain, right? I apologize if, I'm kind of I'm not asserting here. I actually don't know much about those two Moonbeam tokens, right? But there are two tokens and they seem to be living on different networks, but they both kind of Moonbeam tokens. And you know what? I'm not here to kind of make any conclusions about like whether they're the same token on different chain or not, but clearly they're related, right? And understanding these relationships for investors, for those who expect to get tokens from those utility from those tokens, is something that clearly must be addressed. We care about this information in different ways, and like I bet every company, every like small project, large company, whatever in crypto, they have their own ways to map and remap all this different thing. Okay, this token is like on this chain, and this is like a bridge token, but this is the native token, and this is that, and this is V1, and this is V2, and that was forked. And we just keep doing it, redoing it. It's error prone. I actually, it happened to me that I went to trade a token. It was a Gala token on one of great dexes in Ethereum. And up actually trading the Gala V1 token instead of the V2 and losing money, because the token list wasn't updated, right? And so it's not criticism of that of that DEX. It's the criticism really of the system. So don't kind of get too critical about this very basic model, but honestly, I think we need a data model for assets and not tokens. Those assets need to have permanent identifiers. Those entities need to have relationships, right? And if we do that, and if we do this right, we can start making cool graph, data. We can, and actually make sense of this stuff that's just constantly growing, and it's kind of like chaotically appearing in this decentralized way, right? Which is great. Just I'd like to be able to know what that is, how we can take this data and present it to users in DeFi and CeFi, like across the world, but also to investors, right? So that they can create investment thesis, so that they can create models and recommendations and like funds and whatever not, and so that ultimately the money goes into those projects that actually deserve it, whether by memes or by the fundamentals. And standards is another thing that kind of comes with this. We do like good UX and good developer experience. If you guys want some standards for like very simple stuff, like, for example, how many decimal points do you want to display in your app for certain tokens? Do you want to display 8 decimal points for a Pepe? Probably not. So we actually published through token lists some additional standard metadata. For example, token, obviously, like good quality token ID, token icons. We add some other data like colors. We're going to start adding tags such as like if it's a stable coin or not, and other things. Display decimals is one of the things that we're using in our UI all the time, and I think it's really handy. So please feel free to pick it up on Token Lister and get this data from us, which we'll keep updating there too. So basically, look, there's no but here in terms of all those coins, right? All those dog coins that are going up. The good news is that actually thinking about data in traditional space, right? Actually, those data processes happen by means of data governance and kind of cross-industry, like by cross-industry bodies, right? Because like it's a problem that needs to be solved by everyone together. And hey, there is this word governance, right? And actually crypto and like this place is great for that, right? And we have tools and we have on-chain tools to do that. So to be honest, I think data, and especially sort of key and kind of like commoditized data, like standards, like identifiers, like metadata, things like that, I think this is a great use case for a DAO. And I think, if we did have something like that, it will save us a lot of, headache, a lot of data errors, and just kind of make both user experience and developer experience so much better. So this is my case for some of the key data problems. I think some of them are easier to solve. Some of them are harder to solve. Many of them people don't like to solve because the Dogecoin went up 30x. But maybe we, maybe the devs should do something. So yeah, I've got many more opinions on the topic. Hopefully, some of you who like data as much as I do kind of have some thoughts as well. Feel free to ping me on Twitter, and yeah, would be cool to discuss that and maybe do something together. I'm getting laughter and hearts from Pyth. Great. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.